If you fall asleep, try not to snore too loud so you don't wake up the person next to you. Right? How many of you are developers? I hope that everyone, because otherwise I would go home. All right, cool, awesome. So, do you work with Agile? Like you have like some kind of Scrum sort of thing going on? Yay, right there, that's awesome. So, okay. Is there any tester here? A few hands? Awesome. Okay, cool. I would like to see more of you here in next editions. So, okay, so now I know a little bit more about you. Before I start talking about craftsmanship, I'll need to talk about Agile. I know that it's very boring after 15 years talking about that. Have you seen this before? No hands, really? Okay, a few hands, right. So that's one interesting thing, because after 15 years, because this was from 2001, and after 15 years of Agile, loads of people forgot about that. So this was a bit of history. So back in 2001, have you heard about Uncle Bob? Wrote clean code? Yeah? So Uncle Bob invited 16 people, 17 with him, to go to a ski resort in Utah. And there, they discussed many different things. So all these people, they were trying to find different ways to deliver software in a more, well, less bureaucratic, less document-based fashion. So in a faster way. So he invited all these people, went to a ski resort in Utah in 2001, and they had a discussion. So these people were people like Kent Beck from Extreme Programming, Ron Jeffries, Martin Fowler, Ken Schwaber, loads of interesting people. Andy Hunt, Dave Thomas that wrote The Pragmatic Programmer, and they were representing things like Scrum, Extreme Programming, Crystal, Feature-Driven Development, and quite a few other things. So after that meeting, they came up with this manifesto, which I find quite cool. Back then, in 2001, that was a big thing in the industry. Is it better now? Yeah, okay. Because I shout quite a lot. So it's a Brazilian and Italian thing. So, yeah, if you tie my hands, I can't speak. So, where I was. So that's when the Agile Alliance was formed. And then, a lot of companies, because then many conferences started, and they were talking about Agile Everywhere, and many conferences or companies got excited about it, and so I would like to do a little bit of that. And I joined a consultancy company in London, where we were doing many of these Agile transformations, and so I saw a big change in companies, like we start having stand-up meetings and burn-down charts and backlogs and use cases became user stories and whiteboards and all this kind of stuff, and then project managers, they needed to do something with them, they didn't know exactly what. Oh, let's call them Agile coaches or Scrum Master or something like that. And Post-its, right? Because like Post-its is the real sign of agility, right? The more Post-its in the wall you have, the more agile you are. And if you put some colorful Post-its, then you are master Pokemon, super agile guru of the universe, right? And as soon as you rejuggle all the Post-its in the wall, beautiful software comes out of it. That's the promise, right? So move some stuff and say, yay, great software, right? That was Agile, right? So Scrum became mainstream, and then everyone's talking about Agile. Yeah, let's do some stand-ups, put Post-its. Our software problems are done, right? Done. So, and then we spent like more than 10 years. I'm drinking coffee, actually. It's quite late now. And then I spent 10 years focusing on process, bureaucracy, reducing waste, people, like psychology, and all this kind of good stuff. Because we are in a software project, right? Of course, we need to focus on that. But all problems that we had to solve, right? So I'm not saying otherwise. So the real problems that had to be solved, because while you don't fix your process, it will be very difficult to produce great software, right? So one thing is related to the other. And the problem is, as things evolved, Agile took a detour, right? So things that were in the manifesto, like process and tools, or individuals' interactions over process and tools, apparently that was forgotten, because everything that I see about Agile today are tools, processes, right? And then new careers emerged. So all of a sudden there was these Scrum Masters going on, right? So, and certified Agile coaches, and certified these, and certified that all these people that cannot code at all, they were certified and helping companies to say, yeah, I'm gonna help you to write great software even when I don't know it myself. But that's a great idea. So, and then the whole original message, because Agile was an umbrella, right? Back in 2001, the reason that those people were invited is because together, with all those methodologies, all the things that those people were creating, when you put them together, we would potentially have a better way to deliver software. And that includes the process side of Agile, right? Mainly Scrum, that it became mainstream, but also the extreme programming, right? And everything, all the feature crystal, everything in between the two. But apparently, Agile took a detour and became synonymous of old Scrum thing, right? So, and the original message gradually started fading away. And then it happened. Then we had what we call the Agile Hangover. So basically, imagine that you were in this post-it party, right? Like putting post-its everywhere, everyone is happy, and then all of a sudden you wake up in the morning with that massive headache and say, yeah, we still suck at writing software, right? So we cannot deliver, we still have the same problems, we still have bugs in production, you have a dedicated QA team. Well, if you have a dedicated QA team, by definition, you are not Agile, right? So QAs are not monkeys, right? It's a shame that I don't have more QA people in. Like these people, they have a brain. And we cannot just say incompetent developers throwing software over the wall so the monkeys test, right? So that's not right. And so we had loads of, so that's what I call Agile Hangover. It's companies that are, hello, mom. So when we have companies that they get to a level of maturity where they can see where they are, so they have a good Agile process, so they shorten their feedback loop, and they are mature enough to understand their shortcomings. And when they realize that they still have things to do, mainly on the software side, that's what I call the Agile Hangover. It's when they realize that just half of the work was done, but there is the other half to be done. And it's almost like, have you heard about Lean? Lean software development, Kanban stuff? Yeah, so people love to talk about Toyota, right? So yeah, how they completely done the entire production line and stuff. That's awesome. Yeah, they can pull the cord and stop the production, don't reduce waste and stock and all this kind of good stuff. But what if their cars were shit, right? Yeah, they're reducing waste, but they are all shit, regardless. So what if they were, could they do what they were trying to do with the old machinery? So they had to re-engineer everything. They had to look after quality, because there's no point in having a good process if you have a shit product. And Agile is going the same direction, right? So yeah, we have a better project now, but we suck at delivering software. And we are in a software project, by the way. So that doesn't make sense to me. So, but what is Agile anyway? So for me, Agile is all about a quick and short feedback loop. That's how I kind of summarize what Agile means. And at the core of all Agile methodologies, that's what all of them are trying to do. If you take Scrum and extreme programming, they're almost like opposites. Like one is very process-focused, the other one is very technical-focused. And at the core of both, they are shortening the feedback loop. Right? And another thing that I say is that Agile doesn't solve problems. It exposes problems. And then shorten your feedback loop, you get more information more often. And the act of reacting to the new information is what gives you the agility. So that's what Agile is shortening feedback loop, exposing information, and then it's up to you what you do. If you don't do anything, nothing matters, really. So, let's get some more. The problem that we have in software craftsmanship or when we look back at the Agile Manifesto, is the working software, right? Everything else is quite cool. The problem is that in 2001, they knew that working software meant something, right? Meant quality, meant loads of things, doing things properly. The problem is that after a few years, that disappeared because the people promoting Agile are not the ones building the software. So one thing that needs to be said is, in a software project, the most important deliverable is the software itself. Everything else is waste, right? From an idea until software in production, everything in between is waste. Management or managers are pure waste, right? Management, thank you. Right, so management is important. Managers are not. It's different, right? So, but we focus now in the process. We need to adopt this practice. We need to adopt this process, as if that was the goal, right? Where all of these things, all this agile stuff, all these practices within the methodologies, they're all a means to an end, right? And that's what we lost, I think. And then we go to certain meetings with product owners and CEOs and CTOs, all the C-level, and they have all these plans of world domination, right? We are going to build this amazing software here, and we're going to offshore to India, and we're going to offshore to there, and we're going to offshore to the rest of the world, but it's a very important software for us, but we're going to offshore everywhere, and we are going to dominate the world. The only thing that they forget is they are hostage of their own software. Businesses today are software companies. It doesn't matter what they do, they are a software company. And businesses will move just as fast as we can deliver software. That's how it works. And they don't realize that. So we dictate the speed of the business, right? If we suck at it, the business will suck. If we do that good, then the business has a chance, right? And the problem is that you cannot see the things going down the drain, because in Agile, so we learned that when something is too big, we break that down, right? So we learned that that's a great thing. So in the beginning of the project, where you don't have anything in there, you can do a feature very quickly because you don't need to deal with any legacy code, and then you do that very quickly. And over time, things start to change because you need to deal with that mess. And then the same feature, because it was like 6 months ago, so a feature 6 months later that shouldn't have been of the same size now looks like 3-4 times bigger, but then we forgot about that, and then we say, let's break it down. Let's break it down into smaller stories. And then, so we don't see. The problem is that when quality goes down, it takes us a very, very long time to understand that, almost when it's too late. And Uncle Bob used to say a thing that's, the best way to go fast is to go well. And that's what I also believe, right? So we need to constantly be looking after our software so we can keep a steady velocity. And some people like to comparing that to gardening as well, right? So I think that the first mention of it was Pragmatic Programmer, if I'm not wrong. That is from 1999. And so you need to look after your garden, like change the plants according to the seasons. If you just leave your garden there and you don't worry about the seasons and the change, it will be much harder for you to bring your garden back to a nice state. You know, in large organizations, where you, every 6 months or so, the CEO, CTO come from up the clouds to speak with the commons in the ground. And then they come up with their beautiful graphs and all that kind of good stuff, and that's the profit and the revenue and the projections, and everyone is sleeping, and then they are talking about all that kind of 5-year plan that is never 5-year. Every 2 years, the 5-year plans change, right? So, and then all of a sudden, right? So I was there listening to all that madness, and then they had a shared QA team. right? So there were loads of application teams. I was in one of them, and we would do all the kind of crap that we were doing, then throw over to the QA people, and then so the QA was shared. And I remember this guy saying things like, I would like a lot of applauses to our QA team, because in the past 6 months, they found over 1,000 bugs, and everyone was, woo, QA! And I was looking, scared at that madness, like, what the fuck is this? Right? So everyone was happy. I would have fired half of that company. And they were happy because QA found 1,000 bugs. Right? These people, QA, they should find nothing, zero, nada. They should be on their Facebooks every time. Like, they should have nothing better to do, because every time that a QA person finds a bug is something that a stupid developer forgot to do. And I am a stupid developer, so I should be less stupid. Right? So that's the plan. So I feel embarrassed every time that someone says, oh, you know that code? Yeah, there is a bug. So I should feel embarrassed. But then they are rewarding. So we should use QAs at the beginning of the process, because they have a brain. We developers, our brain is to make things work. Their brain is how they're going to break something. They're very evil people, right? So they want to break everything that we built. So if we bring them to the beginning of the process, they can help with the analysis. They can help to come up with acceptance criteria. We use their brain power to say, we need to deliver this feature, and they will say, yes, maybe we should do this, this, and that, because that can break this, this, and that. So, but there you go. That's an Agile project for you, by the way. So, and then in 2008, Uncle Bob and a few other guys in Chicago, they looked back and they said, look, this Agile thing, that's not exactly what we had in mind, right? So 2 people became very happy about it, but the other 15 was like, yeah, right? So we don't have the alliance, we don't provide certification. So yeah, that's not what we had in mind. So then they came up with software craftsmanship. So craftsmanship, at the end of the day, wouldn't even be needed. We wouldn't even be talking about that if Agile had been implemented properly. But craftsmanship was a reaction to bad Agile, right? So it was a way to bring the technical side back. And then back in 2008 in Chicago, they came up with a different manifesto. So, and let's agree with something. Let's stop with this manifesto, because it's getting really boring now. There's manifesto for everything now, so I think that is enough. So, but let's talk about a little bit of this, right? So, it builds on top of the Agile manifesto. So basically, not only working software, so they address that straight away, but we want well-crafted software. So basically what we want is software that we can rely. I can press a button and I know it works. I'm not scared to change. You know that feeling that you say, I'm not sure if I should change this, and then you do that, like feeling that it's going to explode in your face. So that's not what we want anymore, right? So I just want you to feel confident and then change the bloody thing. So another thing is steadily adding value, right? So this doesn't mean adding more features or fixing bugs or anything like that. So what it means is there's a big debate if software is or is not an asset. And the way that I see that, I don't even care, but I definitely see that as an investment. So imagine how much money is involved in a software project. From an inception, from an idea from someone, until the software goes out, everyone that is involved. Not only the developers, but marketing, sales, whatever is involved, all the machines and salaries and everything. Software is a very expensive business, right? And what happens in large organizations are that every 5 years, and I worked for quite a few of them, there's always, do you work for large organizations, like big companies, some of you? So they have these decommissioning plans. So they build some crap. And then after, like, I don't know, 3 years, they say, no, now we have like 17 systems that do the same thing, and we need to decommission some of them, and we need to build a new one that is as shit as the previous ones, right? So that needs to stop this madness, right? So steadily adding value, in my view, as a craftsman, is basically not to allow that to happen. So we need to build software in a much, much better way. So, and if we decommission something, it's because, not just because it's so difficult to maintain. It's because the business changed, right? So, and that we should get our return on investment back. That's the whole point. At some point, we need to start making money out of that investment, right? That's the return on investment. That's why you invest, you get money. But, yeah, so some companies, they have so much money that they don't even see that, how inefficient they are. So, community of professionals. This is at the heart of craftsmanship. So, this is about us, more experienced developers, to share what we know with the less experienced developers, right? So if we want to change our industry, it's up to us to do that, right? It's up to us to share what we know, to mentor new, junior people, because that's the only way that we can change our industry, right? We cannot wait for someone to put a certification in place or governments try to regulate our profession, because that would be the beginning of the end of creative software, right? So it's up to us to make our industry better. And productive partnership. For me, this is one of the things that I like the most. And the way that I interpret that is I don't believe an employer-employee relationship. I have 20 years of career. For 18 years, I was a permanent employee. And for 2 years now, I have my own company and I employ people. And that didn't change my mind, right? Either as an employer or as an employee. For me, this is just the way that you sign a contract. So we have a contract, that's how we get paid, that's the benefits that we have. But the mindset shouldn't be employer-employee. Should be of a productive partnership. There is a company that needs a service, and there is a professional that is offering that service. If it's in a permanent base, if it's in a contract base, in a consultant, that doesn't matter, right? So for me, this professionalism is all of us becoming more professional, right? Understanding that no one owns our career. We offer quality service, someone buys quality service from us. That's how it works, right? So some clients are not prepared for that. So they may say, no, look, son, there are far more intelligent people here that understand this. Thank you very much, but keep on your coding, doing your coding side because you don't need your input in the business. Some companies don't want you. They want to segregate. You are the monkeys that code. We are the smart people that think and create strategies. And if you are in this situation, you know what you do? You find another job, right? Find another company. Don't waste your time in places that where no one values you, right? So life is too short. It's your career, right? So don't let anyone own your career. Just leave these bloody places. So there is not a proper definition of software craftsmanship. I offered a few. This is one of them. And if I had to summarize craftsmanship in one word, that would be professionalism. That's how I see the software craftsmanship movement. Although it started as a reaction to bad Agile, it started as a way to bring the technical side of Agile back. Craftsmanship became more than that. It became a full movement of developers where we are trying to get better at what we do, we are taking ownership of our careers, and we are trying to become more professional, right? This is not a bashing talk, like, I'm not bashing Agile, by the way. I just want to make it very clear. And neither Agile coaches. Like, I worked with amazing Agile coaches, some of the best in the world in London, and in many very good Agile projects. And I think that Agile and craftsmanship, the current state of Agile and the current state of craftsmanship, they complement each other. Agile is very good to help us to identify if we are building the right thing. And I think that one thing that craftsmanship brings to the table is that we are building that thing right? So that's how I think the two complement each other. The problem that we have is that we developers we are very bad at promoting our technical practices. And that's why other people have far more success to bring their ideas into organizations because they are able to speak the business language. They are able to speak about value, feedback, and all these things that managers love. And we can't do that, or we don't know how. And that's why we suffer. And it's time for us to understand that, right? How many of you have seen this? Few hands, right. This has almost like 20 years. So this is extreme programming practices. So The practices in the middle, test-driven development, pair programming, simple design, that's where these things came from. So a lot of people heard about pair programming and TDD, and they are forced to do it, or they think, okay, we need to learn that because that's what people are asking. You should ask yourself, where did it come from? Why? Who created these things? Right? So this comes from XP. And they are part of Agile. Right? They are the technical side of Agile. The things in the middle, they are not context dependent. Because a lot of people say, yeah, but in my company, I'm not allowed to do this, or I'm not allowed to do that. Or you don't understand my context. My context is different. No, your context is not. Right? Companies are, vast majority of them are very similar when it comes to software problems. Right? They're not as special as they like to think. And also, the ones in the middle, they are completely context agnostic, right? It doesn't matter. You don't need a specific context to do test-driven development, refactoring, simple design, pair programming. As you start going broader, then context becomes slightly more important. As soon as you start talking about customer test, whole team, planning small releases, that will involve more an organizational change. But the reason that I'm saying this, that I'm showing this, is because we need to learn of talking about our practices according to values and feedback loop. So if we take some of the 5 core technical practices that we embrace, so for example, automated tests. You don't go to your manager or to whoever and say, oh, we need to use JUnit, right, or whatever. So it's not about testing, but it's a different conversation when you say, how long does it take us to know that our entire system works? What's our feedback loop? From when people start changing the systems all over, what is our feedback loop? How long is it? Like, wouldn't it be nice if I could just press a button and in a few minutes, I'm confident that my entire system works? That's feedback loop. Much shorter feedback loop. That's value to the business. So test-driven development. Wouldn't it be nice if we could have feedback from our design? As we start going along, we are constantly challenging our design and say, oh, is it testable? Can we produce even documentation as a side effect? Right? So that's value. That's feedback loop that we get. Right? So continuous integration. It doesn't matter if you have people working in different countries or not, but even like if we just have 4 developers working in pairs, as soon as my pair finished something, we push some stuff, runs tests against the whole system and notify everyone else. So in minutes, I can know if someone had pushed some code in Australia, I'm in London, and in minutes I can know that my system is broken or it's been fixed. That's feedback loop. How long it would take otherwise? So we can automate that. So we can have a shorter feedback loop. We can have more value. Right? Refactoring. Will it be nice to keep our system always in a great state? Because refactoring, there are basically 2 types. One is the part of the TDD lifecycle, red-green refactor, that's one. The other one is like when you are adding a new feature. So we are adding a new feature, the first question that you ask is my system prepared to receive the new feature? And if it's not, instead of hammering your new feature in, you refactor your system so you can just nicely slide that feature in. Right? So that's value. You're keeping your system healthy. Pair programming. Immediate feedback loop. I type something stupid, the name of the variable, and my pair's like, oh, what the hell is that? Immediate feedback loop. Immediate. Right? So, because we like to think that we are awesome as developers, right? But it's fascinating to see how people react immediately after you decide to name something, or to write a certain test, or to put loads of code inside a method. You have this immediate feedback loop. It's value. Feedback loop. Right? There is loads of knowledge sharing as well as you rotate pairs. You are not, in terms of business, you don't rely on anyone specifically. If someone is hit by a bus, then, or something like, oh, yeah, it would be nice to do this feature now, but, you know what, John is on holidays, and we cannot do something because Paul and Sally, they are on holidays, right? So that doesn't make sense. So when you are rotating pairs, testing, you don't need to hold your business because of certain people. Yeah, and basically, we should not discuss practices. Although I gave examples of practices, we should discuss the value that they bring. Because as I said, all these practices, they are a means to an end. right? Although we promote XP practices today, and we only do because I personally don't know better, right? Because for me, as our job is to, what is the value? What is the feedback loop that we need? What are the practices that we should use to achieve that? And there's nothing wrong for people that don't use some of these practices. But the only question that I ask is, it's totally fine if you don't do that, but what do you do instead that is better than that? Because if you do something that is better, I'm going to throw all of this away. At some point, we will. Our industry will move forward. Someone will find better ways of doing things, and at that time, we throw everything away and we move on, right? But you need to know, instead of saying, I don't do that because I don't like, it's because I don't do that because I do something better instead, right? But of course, that these things take a long time, and that's why in software craftsmanship, we practice a lot, right? So as professionals, we shouldn't be paid to practice, right? I don't pay my solicitor, my dentist, my doctor to practice. I don't buy them books, right? So I go to these professionals expecting that they can solve my problem. So that's what we should do ourselves. We should be able to learn to practice in our own time, with our own money. If we are working for a company which give us that pays for us to go to conferences, buy our books, give us time to learn, stay there, right? Because they are a company that recognizes that. I have a wife, I have kids. So everyone has exactly the same amount of time, right? We have 24 hours in a day, that's it. The way that we decide to spend those hours is up to us, right? So depending on what you expect from your professional life, you need to rethink how you spend your time and what you're going to sacrifice. So, have you seen these triangles where they keep putting quality in there and say like, you need to pick two, right? So you cannot have all the three in here. Like either you choose cost and time or quality, all this kind of nonsense, right? Or there's a new version that says now quality is non-negotiable, right? So, as if people knew what quality meant. And this is like you find in every kind of management talk and agile talk, and people keep regurgitating this shit. Like, the thing, this is all bullshit, and I'll tell you why. So, how do you measure quality? Right? As if people knew how to do that, because cost, I can. Time, I can. How do you measure quality? How can you measure something that you cannot precisely define? Quality is subjective. Quality for whom? In which context? So all of this is rubbish. It's just management rubbish talking about as if they knew how quality is calculated. And I stopped saying that because I dread the day that I go to a client and they say, oh, you say that you do all this quality software. And they ask me, how do you measure that? Because I have no clue what I'm going to answer, right? Because like, it doesn't matter. You don't come up with like, oh, because we have metrics. All the software metrics, they are all rubbish. All rubbish, right? So I gave up. Quality cannot be measured, period. What you can do is specify a criteria. Does my system perform? Or I expect to process X number of trades in X amount of time. That's one metric. I expect to have X% of test coverage, which is totally bollocks as well, right? So it doesn't guarantee that it works, that it uses the right language. It doesn't guarantee that I can change my system, that it will adapt to changes. There's no way that you can define, because if you could, you would be a billionaire right now. But while no one finds that, people keep regurgitating that they know that what quality is. So, but an interesting thing about quality is that I doubt that someone can define, but I believe that everyone can feel. So when you are working on a project and you have your product owner, all your business and the developers and testers, everyone else, you know that feeling. I hope that some of you had this feeling at least once in your life. That is not so easy, but where everything works and you have that pleasure to go to work. And everything that you do, you feel that everyone is contributing, that things are working well. That's for me is when you feel quality, where everyone is doing their bit. So all the problems are being solved constantly. So that's what I think that we can do our part. We can apply loads of practices and ways of coding and ways of interacting with the business, but can we measure? No. And even things like, this is dangerous. Like if you use Sonar, do you use Java or SonarQube or... Yeah, so these things, don't show the URL to your Sonar to any manager. Keep it that secret, right? Because they're going to look at that stats to measure, oh, that's the LCOM4 and that, yeah, so all the kind of, all those metrics that no one understands, well, managers won't understand, and they say, no, we need to have 80% of test coverage. And then what they do, they hire a company somewhere that is cheaper and say, yeah, start retrofitting our unit tests for us. I've done that. It's serious stuff. So not I've done that, but I was in a project where that happened. So as we know, like code coverage, by the way, it just measured the number of lines of production code executed by a test code. That's it. But if you can remove all your assertions, and you probably will have close to 100% anyway. So in my view, software craftsmanship is a long journey to mastery. And the closer you get to it, the further away you become, if that makes any sense, right? So it's basically like you are constantly improving, and the more you get, the better you get, the more you discover how much you suck, and then you need to learn more and more. But this journey of like trying to be as good as you can be, this is what drives me to craftsmanship, right? That's what I love about our industry. So the attitude in terms of what we expect, because like when someone calls him or herself a craftsman, right, or a craftswoman, that doesn't mean that this person is better or worse than anyone else. I want to make it very clear. Because some people, sometimes they look at the craftsmanship movement and say, these guys think that they are rock stars. That's not about that, right? So you know when you have like, I don't want to mix, because I don't want to give the wrong examples, but when people like a set of principles, being political, being religious, being whatever, normally those set of principles have a name, right? That doesn't make these people better or worse than anyone else. So craftsmanship for me has a set of principles. And when someone says, I'm a craftsman or a craftsman-woman, basically what this person is saying is, I share certain principles. It's not saying, I'm far better than you. That's not the case. Things that are common in people that call themselves craftsmen, and that doesn't mean that people that don't call themselves craftsmen won't share these values. They can share. I'm not religious, but I share many of the values of religious people, right? So it's just a way to summarize. But first of all, you find people that are very passionate about what they do. Probably the vast majority, if not all, are very passionate about what you do. At least makes your life easier. And career ownership, for me that's important. As I said, not about employer-employee thing, but like you own your career, right? So you are interested to be better and find proper jobs where you are valued and provide a better service. Deliberate practice. We know that it's our responsibility to practice. If I want to be a good professional, I need to be up to scratch of the, according to the services that I offer. So people expect me to be good, and I don't want them to pay me to learn. Although that happens all the time, we learn a lot during our projects. That should not be expected, right? And the Boy Scout rule. So you always leave things better than you found, right? So that's or you leave the campground cleaner than you found it. That's the Boy Scout rule. So that's all. This is a thing that I took to my personal life. I'm always trying to do things in a better way, to leave things better, right? So loads of these values are not only my professional values, but are my life values as well. So I think that if you want to be treated as a professional, you should start behaving like one. Right? Start moaning and complaining about your company because your company doesn't do this, doesn't do that, doesn't do that. Well, they are not meant to do that. Right? Once again, remember how you deal with other professionals. Remember how you deal with lawyers, dentists, everyone, hairdressers, whoever. Right? You don't pay them to be good. You pay them for a good service. So we need to start behaving like that if you want to be respected. We say, oh, but this company, they treat developers like shit. Because we behave like shit. right? We are waiting for these people to give us knowledge. It's time for us to stop being factory workers, right? We cannot let our companies control what we learn and when we learn. So start behaving like professionals if you want respect. And when people say, yeah, but no one else in my company does this, and because no one else does that, so I shouldn't do that because it's too hard. There is a sociologist, and he passed away a few years ago, Brazilian one, and he used to tell this story. So there was a fire in the forest, and then the lion, the king of the forest, the lion was trying to organize the animals to run away from the fire and run away from the forest, from their house. So, and then all of a sudden, in the middle of that mess, then the lion, all the animals running, and the lion saw the hummingbird flying to a close-by lake, putting some water in the beak, coming back and pouring the fire. And then the lion said to the hummingbird, but hummingbird, you never stop this fire. And the hummingbird said, I know, but at least I'm doing my part. And that's exactly what being a professional is, right? So you don't, it doesn't matter who is doing what. Just do your part. These are only good until we find better one to replace them, right? So there's no super, but even XP, TDD, all this kind of stuff, I'm not religious at all about any of them, right? For me, as a craftsman, I will always continuously trying to find better ways of providing a service, right? I will follow good practices until someone smarter than me, or hopefully if I get lucky one day in my life, have an insight where we find something better, right? And that's when I'm going to move. Agile software development is not Scrum. If you want to remember something from this talk, please remember that, right? So at least Agile software development without XP is definitely not Agile software development. Once again, those things are a means to an end, even XP, right? So I think that I'm running out of time from what I understand. How much time do I have? Forever? Another hour and a half? So yeah, a lot of companies in the UK, we are not even using the word Agile anymore. Because Agile is getting a bad press, and XP is getting a bad, and everything gets a bad press when someone screws with it. So what you do is, you don't say the words. So you go to a place and say like, wouldn't it be nice if you could have a meeting every morning, so everyone could share what they're doing, right? What if we stop using all these tools, and what if we could put some post-its here? Wouldn't it be nice, because then it's very visible, easy to change. Or, oh, maybe we could write some automation tests, right? So maybe, what if we could, so we start talking about the values and the practice without naming them. And that's much easier. It's fascinating what you can do when you don't put names. Because as soon as you put a name, there is a kind of a football thing, right? So you support Manchester United, or support like Liverpool, or whatever you do. And then, no, Manchester United. Ah! So, yeah, so don't mention these things. Mention the value. Understand what you are trying to do. You see that you have far more productive conversations. Another thing that is important, software craftsmanship is not about beautiful code. That it annoys me deeply when someone says, oh, this craftsmen, they only look about their unit tests and crafting code. That's not what it's about, right? So for me, it's about continuous delivering value via well-crafted software. That's what it's about. And craftsmanship is not enough to guarantee, I don't think anything is enough to guarantee the success of a project, but for sure, the lack of it can be the main cause of its failure. That's what I believe. And I think that, do I have like 5 minutes? Okay, so, I spoiled it, didn't I? So, this is not an easy question to answer. So I'm going to tell you a story. So what it means to be a craftsman to me, right? So I'll try to make it short. So in the early days of my career, I felt that I was awesome, right? So, you know, young, you know how to code, or you've been coding since you were a kid, then you know more than other people, you go to university, you can make things work, and you find that you are awesome. And then, when you are young, you have knowledge, you become extremely arrogant, and I was the most arrogant person on earth, because I thought that I was the best developer. So, in the very early days of my career, there was a company, a very large company, that they were recruiting. I had to leave my job to apply. It was a long selection process and stuff, so it was a big risk for me. and I didn't have like financial background from my parents, so I would leave my job and without knowing if I would get the other one. But it was a large company, and that's what I wanted. And I tried it, and 900 people, something like that, applied. Only 36 or 34 got in, and awesome, right? I got in. So then I was like unbearable. You couldn't even speak to me because I was talking about that all the time, how awesome I was. And then I remember that when I joined this company, there were like the new people would be distributed in different teams. There were some application teams, and there was the architecture team. And the architecture team was considered the best team in the company, right? So everyone was talking about this team, the architecture team, and blah, blah, blah. And they always talked about the manager that they had that was an amazing developer, a fantastic guy, blah, blah. And of course, I was awesome, right? So I had to be in that team. That was my place. So one day I saw this guy in there, and I went to speak to him. And I went there like, oh my God, what I'm going to say? And then I said, I didn't know exactly. I was just, I'm Sandro, and I want to work for you. And then he was like, what? And then he started talking to me. And we talked for half an hour. And he was asking me things like, what do you do outside? Like, do you have any pet projects? What do you do? Like, do you code at home and stuff? Things like that. Nothing deep, nothing technical. And then after 30 minutes, 40 minutes, he said, cool, you can join my team. And I was like, what? I couldn't even believe, right? So it took me many years to understand that what he did during that conversation was to measure my passion. That's what he was doing. He didn't care about how good I was. He was just trying to see how passionate I was. So, long story short, I started in a Monday, and then he came to speak to me, and then he said, okay, I have this. He explained me the system a little bit, and then gave me a task. I asked him how much time I would have to finish the task, and he said, oh, today's Monday, maybe by Friday, should be okay. Friday I come here, see how you're getting along. And that was my chance to shine. So I was like, blah, 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 writing code like a maniac. And then I was there until like midnight that day, got back on Tuesday morning, like 6, 7 o'clock in the morning, blah, 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 blah. About 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I was done. And then I rushed into his office and I said, boss, I'm done, I'm finished, and it's working. And then he was typing on that green thing. We were in Delphi. Delphi had this amazing IDE, and he was typing the green thing that I had no idea what it was. And then he looked at me and said, like, right, oh, that's cool. Like, but when you say that it's done, then you say that it's finished. Finished is redundant because it's done. So if it's done, should it be working? Yeah, that's what I said. It's done and it's working. And so like, okay, I didn't cut, but so he's weird, but that's all right. So, and then he said, okay, sit down, let's see what he did, what you did. So he opened my Delphi code in that green thing, in the command line that I didn't know what it was, and then he started moving up and down, and then he would go and say, oh, can you see here? See the size of this try-catch. Do you know how stack and heap works? Do you know how many instructions you have? And then here you are allocating memory. You're deallocating here. This is a candidate for memory leaks. And do you know here you could use a better way. If you did that this way, you would save some lines or save some memory. Basically, what he did, he went through 200 lines of code, completely destroyed them. There was nothing right in that code. And then he said, did you understand all the points that I raised? I said, yes, I was quite ashamed, right? And then he said, if you had to do it again, would you know how to do it properly? Yeah. He deleted the code. Deleted. He removed from source control. And I was like, And then he said, I couldn't even say. And then I said, well, today is Tuesday. I gave you until Friday, so you still have time. Go and do it again. I wanted to kill the bastard. All right? I said, oh, who the hell does he think he is speaking to me like that? I just went outside, smoked one cigarette after another, so I'm going to resign. I'm not working for this person. Right? And then, after I calmed down, like 2 packs of cigarettes, and I was almost dying, and then it was when I realized, oh, When I was leaving his office, oh yeah, that was very important. When I was leaving his office, right, he called me and he said this. He said, Sandro, and then I looked back and then he said, how it's done is as important as getting it done. And then I just couldn't understand that. I was so pissed off, I was so annoyed that I couldn't understand. I couldn't understand how important those words were. And then when I calmed down, I realized that for the first time in my life, someone took the time to teach me, right? And though that day was a mark in my career, it was a change in my career, because when I spent like 3 years working with that team, and I learned how to be respectful, how to work in a team, how to be proud of what we do, right? So that quality was important, what we were delivering. Not just, he used to say like, anyone, any person, given time, will be able to make it, something work. What distinguishes a good developer and a bad developer is how you make it work, right? So for me, that was my first contact with craftsmanship. So when I think about craftsmanship, that's what comes to my mind, is the care, is being proud of what we do. So what do I expect from you? You had a very long day of talks. Think about your career. You heard many amazing speakers. You came here. Think about what everything told you, all the things new things that you learned. Review where you are in your career. Review the company that you work for. Try to understand where you want to be. Plan your career, right? So take ownership of your career. So I wrote a book on craftsmanship. That's me on Twitter. So thank you very much.